Okay. Good evening. Welcome to the Selectboard meeting, the Brattleboro Selectboard meeting of Tuesday, January 7th, 2025. Happy New Year. John, was this meeting properly warned?
Yes, Daniel, it was.
That's great. And it looks like we got a quorum, so we'll get underway. Good evening to our interpreters and friends. Okay, so our first order of business is to approve minutes. We have minutes from December 17th, 2024. Can I get a motion? Richard?
I move we approve the minutes of December 17th as presented.
Okay, Richard's made a motion to approve the minutes of December 17th as presented. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye, passes 5-0. Chair's remarks, I have none this evening. Move on to manager's comments.
Happy 2025, everybody. A couple announcements. Vermont Secretary of State Sarah Copeland-Hansis will unveil Vermont's first ever Civic Health Index, a report measuring how civically engaged Vermonters are across the state and in relation to the rest of the country at Brooks Memorial Library on Wednesday, January 15th from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. The event will be an opportunity to learn more about the report, offer feedback, and help prioritize next steps. For more information, visit the library website or drop by the library at 224 Main Street. 2025 dog license renewals are available online through the town's website and in person at the town clerk's office. Renewal notices will be mailed out in the next few weeks. Petitions for town office, town meeting member, and school board are now available at the town clerk's office. The deadline to turn all candidate petitions in is 5 p.m. on January 27th, and the deadline to get an article on the ballot by petition is 5 p.m. on Thursday, January 16th. Any town meeting members who have terms that are expiring and were elected, not those that were appointed at a caucus, should have received a letter of intent in the mail. These need to be signed and returned to the town clerk's office by 5 p.m. on January 27th in order to have their name appear on the ballot. And that is all that I have.
Great, thanks, John.
Yes.
Select board members with comments and or committee reports. Elizabeth.
Thank you, Daniel. I would like to wish our colleague, Peter Case, a happy birthday.
No.
Oh.
I did it very quietly, and you seem grateful for that.
Are we going to sing?
No
yeah,
singing.
No, we're not
No
going to
singing.
sing.
In Welsh, we would say Penblwydd Hapus. I don't think the interpreter can handle Penblwydd Hapus. It's Welsh for happy birthday.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Anything else?
That's all.
Any committee reports relative to Peter's birthday?
No, none.
The Senior Solutions Committee, has that met recently? Anyone else?
Yes?
What's your name, Franz?
Franz,
Franz.
yes. Yes, you pronounced that
Yeah.
correctly.
Feels like it's
So
been a
I
minute.
just want to mention something that at least a couple of people in town seem to be concerned about, and I said I could bring it up here. And that's the general tone of political discussions relating to municipal affairs in Brattleboro, and that some people think that they've taken kind of a nasty edge on recently, whether happening on social media or in other forums, and was thought that maybe it'd be worthwhile for one of us just to say, hey, everybody, let's cool it, let's get our opinions out there, but try to restrain ourselves from the open antagonism that sometimes can be shown. So I think somebody here once said something like, be nice, and that's what I'm recommending, be nice.
Okay. Any other board members with comments or committee reports?
I just want to remind folks, like, we've got these heaters going. It can be hard to hear, so try to speak up a little bit.
Yeah.
I couldn't hear the end of what Franz said. So I think it's good to project, is what
Yeah.
I'm trying to say. That's all
Thanks,
I have.
Peter. Richard?
Well, I have a comment, but it's mostly about the budget, so I guess I'll wait.
We'll save it for later. All right. Very good. We'll move on to public participation. This is the part of the meeting where members of the public can speak on something that is not on tonight's agenda. or to request that we take something off the consent agenda. And I see a hand raised very quickly on Zoom, so I will go to that. And I think it is David Levenbach. And I get,
It is indeed.
David, just 1 second. I will just remind folks that you get up to 3 minutes, that we will listen to one another, we'll be respectful, and refrain from booing, cheering, and other exclamations. David.
Thank you. You may recall that I sent a message to members of the select board and to administration with a proposed method of reporting EMS billing and collections such that the collection data is synced with the quarter from which the bills are derived. And so I have two questions. Number one, when will the fire department make its next presentation before the select board? And will such data be included in that presentation? Thank you.
John, are you able to answer either or both of those?
I think we have that penciled in for the first meeting in February. Chuck is nodding his head.
Okay. And the way that David was suggesting that the data was presented, do you think we could take a look at that? And
We could take a look at it. I'm not sure it's really going to help us know anything, but we're certainly happy to take a look at it.
Okay, great, thank you. Other members of the public who wish to comment on something that is not on tonight's agenda? I think Mr. Heller was first.
Just a question. This is.
Would you introduce yourself?
I will, yes. Oscar Heller, District 9. This is generally about the budget. It's something I've been asked to present for the Finance Committee. Would you
Just
like me
save
to
it
wait?
yeah,
Okay.
thanks.
Thank you.
Dick?
A couple things that have
Would you
already been
introduce
mentioned.
yourself, just in
Richard
case someone
DeGray,
doesn't know who you
District
are?
8. Thank you. Happy New Year.
Yeah, you too.
I was hoping to ask if John or Patrick had any idea of what revenue at this point has come in, not an exact number for EMS billing off the top of your head. The second one is I've been looking for the audit and wondering when that is going to rear its head. Not many people like to look at it. I do. And thirdly, I'd like to touch a little bit upon what Franz said. I'm really concerned about where our town is in the last few years. We've had this undercurrent percolating. And I think in the last month, the heat is turned up and it's really bubbling. And I see this divisiveness that's going on in town and people trying to recruit people for town meeting, like a them versus us. And that's not healthy for our town. I certainly encourage people to run for town meeting, to run for the select board, and who gets elected. What's not a good process, and I've said this to the charter committee, is when we go out and recruit people to run. And certainly we saw that at the last special meeting, and that's well and good, that's your prerogative. But our town meeting works best when we work together as a community. And I don't see that happening, and I see the wedge every day getting driven deeper and deeper into the ground and dividing a beautiful community that we all love. And we need to stand up to that and say, listen, we need to start coming together on issues that affect the town, whatever they are. And there's always something in the on-deck circle that none of us are aware of. So I would ask everybody in town, those listening, how many people are out there, to tone the rhetoric down, start working together, and damn it, Facebook is not your friend. It really isn't. It is probably the worst invention to hit society ever. And I see people going after people, And that's not who we are as a community. That's not who we want to be as a community. So I hope that we can start coming together and start listening to each other, because the way that it's going now is if you don't agree with me, you're against me. And there's no middle ground. And we need to start finding some middle ground on issues that are facing us. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, thank you. John, you were asked for a sort of ballpark figure for EMS revenue. I don't know if we're going to be inclined to give like a back of the envelope.
Well, I did
calculation.
actually ask that question of Kim Frost before she departed last
Yeah.
week, and she told me that we were running about 64%, so at halfway through the year, including the 250,000 that you transferred in there. So
Okay.
we're doing well.
Got it. All right. And we'll have a report in February where
Yep.
we'll be looking at hard data. And the audit?
I believe that's finished, but I haven't seen it yet.
It's getting close. I know
Okay.
it's quite close.
Oh, it's close. Okay, not quite yet.
Okay, very good. Thank you. All right, who was next? Alyssa?
Are your microphones on? I can barely hear you over there.
No, they're not. They are on for BCTV, but they don't project in the room. They actually kind of used to. If BCTV are available and can help us with that, great, but they might not be able to do it right now. We're going to endeavor to speak as loudly and clearly as we can. We could turn the heaters off, but you wouldn't thank us for that.
Hi.
Alyssa.
My name is Lissa Weinman. I am a partner in 118 Elliott, a local community center and gallery downtown. But I'm here tonight representing the Wyndham World Affairs Council, Brooks Memorial Library, and Vermont Independent Media. We are putting together something that should be of interest to Dick DeGray, because it's precisely trying to address this issue of the divisiveness in town and the country, and that is to start planning events for the 250th birthday of the United States, which is next year, 2026. And we are having a meeting at the American Legion Hall on January 16th. That's next Thursday evening from 6 to 7:30. And we're inviting people from all sectors of Brattleboro society to come and share ideas about how we can celebrate as a town this semi-quincentennial of the United States at a time of great national disunity. So the idea is to create spaces for people to have these kinds of dialogues about the things that we have in common and our differences, and listen with respect. But we're such a creative community that we're hoping that groups like NEYT or the River Gallery School, the museum, of course, many other groups express themselves around this anniversary in a way that would befit the town of Brattleboro, which means that it will be all over the place, and we love that. So I just wanted to let people know. I'm going to leave a few flyers here tonight, but it's next week, January 16th, and there is a Vermont State Commission. I think that the administrator of that is going to be joining us that night as well. And it's important to note that we don't really think of this as a celebration and just more fireworks. No, we want to really use this milestone to really look at who we are as Americans and who we want to be. So the library, Wyndham World Affairs, and the Vermont Independent Media have already created their own project called Examining American Identity and Leadership in a Changing World. We've been having discussions with Meg Mott about the language of the Declaration of Independence and how it relates to problems we're facing today. So we have a project, but we're encouraging others to create their own projects and come together, which will be facilitated by Brooks Library, providing a space once a month for people to gather and plan for 2026. So all this will be discussed. There's no plan set in stone. It's all fresh, and we're really inviting people to come out and be part of something that can bring us together rather than drive us apart. So I just wanted to announce that, and I appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Lisa. Anyone else want to speak on something that's not on tonight's agenda? Yep. And if you would just introduce yourself.
So my name is this on? I don't know.
It's on for
Just for BCTV.
BCTV,
Okay.
yeah.
So my name is Jill Stahl-Tyler, and here to request the select board to put something on the ballot. And it would be a request, which I had worded out very nicely, and now the computer's dying, of course. But it's for the safe injection site that had been talked about here, and you all had met, I know, with the legislators back in July or so, and had asked whether the town would get a vote on that, and you didn't get a real clear answer. In December, I went and listened to the legislative update, and I asked that question, and I was told really clearly that it was not something that the state would consider asking the towns, and that if the state decided that they wanted to put a safe injection site in the town of Brattleboro, that would be what they would do. So I'm here to ask that you would put an actual question on the ballot. Should the town of Brattleboro advise the state that before any safe injection site be put into the town of Brattleboro, that the town of Brattleboro voters would have a chance to weigh in on that?
Okay.
So my request.
Yeah, thank you. Just so happens that I happened to be in the room with Patrick and Town Attorney Fisher when you were speaking with them about this matter maybe like 4 weeks ago or something. And there were some questions about like jurisdiction, what the current legislation allows for and what it doesn't allow for, and process. And so unless my fellow board members, want to see this come back as just something that the select board decides, I think we'd probably need to see some language in writing. I think the town attorney would need to take another look at what you're proposing, and then the board could consider it.
So the town attorney did give me that.
Would you mind going to the microphone?
As you came through as we were talking, exactly, and the town attorney has looked at it. Bob Fisher gave the wording to me. That's what's on the computer that I'd have to turn back on that just went dead. But yeah, he had the exact wording, and it's pretty much what I'm saying, that it would go on to the ballot saying before any safe injection site would be established in the town, that this town would have a vote. That's it. I don't remember questions from Bob about jurisdiction as much as this would be a statement that would go from the town of Brattleboro to the state of Vermont.
Okay. All right, thank you.
I just have a question.
Yep,
Are
you speak up a little bit.
Jill, are you proposing that the select board make that determination and the select board place it on the ballot?
So yes, my understanding is that you all have that power, and should you choose not to, then I would be forced to go to the town and collect signatures and ask the town to get enough signatures, which I think I have like a week to do.
Right.
But the reason to ask you all to do that is basic. It's let the people speak.
Yep.
If it's which way the town would want to go or not. I know that it was something that was discussed. It's coming into Burlington, and there may be difficulties with getting that to move to fruition, et cetera. It's still a valid point. What do the town voters feel? And do the town voters get to have an opinion? That's my point, that I would like to see the town get the vote.
Okay.
I'm gonna sit down one last time.
Yeah, we don't typically go back and forth in this. I think you need to put something in writing to us and we could consider it.
Want me to send you an email right
Yeah,
now?
sure. I'll receive it at some point later on. Thank you. Any other members of the public who wish to speak on something that's not on tonight's agenda? Okay. So we're going to move on to the consent agenda. Has one thing on it.
We have one thing on consent, and if you approve this agenda, you'll be ratifying the decision to suspend parking fees for the last 2 weekends in December.
Okay, very good. Board members, anyone wish to pull that item for discussion later on? Okay, seeing none. To accept a motion.
I motion that we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Okay, Peter's made a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
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 Aye, that passes 5-0, and the consent agenda has been accepted. Next is old business, and item A of old business is the Ordinance change, Chapter 15, the Downtown Improvement District. We're going to have a second read-in. Sue, are you going to speak to it? Wonderful, thank you. Sue Fillion, Planning Director.
Yes, good evening. I just also want to say I'm an ex officio member of the DBA's board,
Thank you.
non-voting member. So the request before you tonight is to hold a second hearing, as a second reading of proposed changes to Chapter 15 of our ordinances, which is the establishment and regulation of the Downtown Improvement Act. The first hearing, or sorry, the first reading was held December 3rd, and I went over the proposed changes, which briefly are, one is a cleanup to define the boundaries. It doesn't change the boundaries, it's just the existing ordinance refers to the Marlboro Graduate School, and that's been gone for several years, so we're just gonna use the address there. Another change is to change, to consider changing the way that the appropriation is made. So annually, DBA comes to the select board with their request. It's been $80,000 for several years, and they also bring their budget with them that's been voted on by their members. The challenge with this is that their fiscal year starts July 1st, and they are still fundraising to figure out how to put their entire budget together. So the preference here is that they just come with the budget request, and then also give an annual report, things that they've done. Another proposed change to the ordinance is to remove the date by which they must hold their annual meeting, which is September 30. So they're almost planning one full year, about 9 months ahead, so they want a little bit of flexibility to when they hold their annual meeting to adopt the budget with their members. But they'll also take the input of members to projects. And then finally, there is a requirement in the ordinance that every 5 years there is a vote, an advisory vote of their members to whether or not to continue the special assessment district. This was a requirement of state statute and becoming a member or becoming a designated downtown. We no longer have to renew that. The 5 years came because every 5 years you would make an application to be a designated downtown. A couple years ago it changed to 8 years, and now they've actually done away with the renewal requirement. So the request here is to remove that requirement for a vote every 5 years. There are other ways that, I think the select board and DBA will get feedback on whether or not it's working. The town is required to make a financial commitment to be a designated downtown, and that can come either through this special assessment district, which is what that advisory vote is kind of asking its members on. It can be tax stabilization, or it can be demonstrating that we have multi-year financial commitments among partners to fund the DBA. So that's an overview of the proposed changes.
Great, thank you. And during the first reading, there were no changes to the ordinance proposed?
There was nothing that came from the select board.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Okay. Thank you, Sue. Members of the board, any comments on this proposed ordinance change?
No.
Questions? Okay. Members of the public? Mr. DeGray?
I believe I had made a request that the voting on the district not be removed. And, Mr. Chairman, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think when you were reading this, you were just saying there's not going to be any control here in reality.
I feel like I almost said nothing just then, so like, it's hard to...
That's right, because it's, this kind of removes the select board.
Yeah.
And I don't think that should be removed. I don't think that there should be something here in perpetuity. There's probably not many people in here that remember how this started and how the funding went. it used to be funded from business people in the community. And then it started getting funded by the town out of the revolving loan fund. And then the legislation changed, and that's when they were allowed to put the special assessment on the buildings within the district. And that's why that language was in there, to give building owners an opportunity to say, well, this isn't working, we don't want this to happen. Now, whether that ever happens or not, it probably won't, but the language should stay here, because once all these changes are made, I doubt very much that this is probably ever going to come before any board after all of us are long gone. So I believe that this should stay here for some accountability. And I think we owe that to the building owners that have to pay that special assessment.
Okay, thank you,
I'm
Dave.
not sure where the, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, and I'm not sure who made that request, if that was from Sue or from DBA.
Okay, thank you. Sue, are you able to respond to
It
that?
came from me because it's not a requirement of the statute anymore. So,
And I want to make sure I'm understanding what changed in statute. So on page 18 of this packet and page 104 of the ordinances, it mentions a change in statute about the designation.
yep,
Is that what we're talking about here, or are we talking about something else?
that is what we're talking about. So prior to the application, the ordinance is saying we're supposed to take an advisory vote. We are no longer required to reapply for downtown designation. It kind of continues until we want to pull out of the program.
Okay, and so having a designated downtown also requires having a designated downtown organization?
Correct.
Okay,
It could be, you need somebody to run the downtown programs. It could be a downtown organization. It could be the town could take over some of that as well.
okay. All right, that's interesting. Seems like we've got some comments here. Let's hear from those first, and then we'll come back to public. Liz and Franz, you had something to say about that?
Yeah. While Mr. DeGray was talking, I got the sense that what we're talking about is taxation without representation. And I wanted to make sure that the people in the downtown district could have a vote on whether or not they want to continue to be taxed. Am I in the right arena here?
It's, well, there's other ways. I mean, the budget gets approved by the membership, which includes the business owner, the property owners of downtown. So if the DBA budget doesn't get approved, that, that becomes a problem. And then Kate is on. She can probably speak to some of the others.
Okay.
But, I don't, yeah.
Okay.
I'll leave it at that.
All right, thanks. Did you want to add on to this particular
Well, just
theme?
what occurred to me in the discussion thus far is that, is there a set of circumstances in which some other organization might wish to become the downtown organization that, somebody who thought we would do it differently or better or something like that? And would there be a process for evaluating that? Or, I mean, because as Mr. Gray said, it does kind of put this into perpetuity, and I'm wondering if at some point there was an impetus to change to a different group. Would we want to somehow account for that in the ordinance here?
I can't answer that. That would probably be a question for the town attorney. There is nothing that locks our downtown district and our downtown organization in with Downtown Brattleboro Alliance. I would imagine that the select board could decide they want to make a change if they wanted to, but I think we need to speak with the town attorney about that.
Okay. Let's hear from Kate Traskis, Director of the Downtown Brattleboro Alliance.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Sue, for the explanation on the ordinance changes. we really came forward with this because we are celebrating 25 years of being in relationship as the designated downtown organization with the town of Brattleboro. And so in past years, when we've come for our budget allocation, there's always been a little back and forth between the DBA and the select board saying, oh yeah, you're here again, it's kind of a given. That being said, there is definitely oversight in from the membership on creating the budget. So annually, we have the annual meeting, the property owners and all of the businesses that buy in with an annual membership are given ample time to review the budget and then vote. And so in my mind, that feels like annually we are asking our membership to say yes to us as an organization, to say yes to our work plan and our budget. And so that's kind of where we're coming from. The other pieces to the ordinance change, again, are just about making that budget process more accurate, as we get closer to the time frame instead of trying to project so far out. And so that would be really helpful for us as well.
Great, thanks, Kate. Other comments on this proposed ordinance change? Lissa?
Lissa Weinman, partner in 118 Elliott, which is within the downtown Brattleboro. I agree with Dick DeGray. I think there needs to be regular accountability around the DBA. I have had a lot of questions about the formation. We tried to actually get copies of earlier mission statements to sort of see how the mission of DBA had changed over time, and we weren't able to access that information. We pay, I believe it's about over $800 extra on our tax bill every year to be part of the downtown district and to support the Downtown Brattleboro Alliance. And I think that there needs to be more accountability to property owners that are actually paying for the group, as opposed to membership who, I think it costs $50. Anybody can join the Downtown Brattleboro Alliance, which is a good thing. But in terms of representing the needs and interests of people who are supporting the brick and mortar stores downtown, I don't necessarily feel happy with the performance of the group on that level. For instance, gallery walk is something that has actually hurt our gallery because everybody is in the parking lot that first Friday and there's no parking. And other business owners and gallery owners that I've talked to about it are also like, we don't understand, it really doesn't serve our interests to have a parking lot fiesta every first Friday. It's taking business away. I mean, I know Kate has other people who might like gallery walk, but the general consensus that we have heard is that it doesn't, for instance, a lot of money is spent on it and doesn't really serve the interests as well as the previous iteration of gallery walk used to for galleries in town. So I would say that any oversight should continue because there needs to be taxation with representation and perhaps more accountability for the Downtown Brattleboro Alliance. And that in no way reflects any kind of ill feelings. I think Kate has been doing a good job. I just think that the organization as a whole has really raised a lot of questions for us as business owners. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Lissa. So I understand from what we've heard from Sue and from Kate is that the accountability would be within the organization. There's a budget that gets voted on that's participatory, and there would still be an annual report to the select board, but because of statute change, there's no longer a requirement for an annual kind of like redesignation, or?
It was an every 5-year redesignation vote that the town would do with the property owners who are paying the special assessment tax.
Okay.
I think that, if I could go a little bit further, I think that's separate kind of oversight that, is not related to changing the budget appropriation. So, DBA would still come, they would make their request for whatever the amount is, they would give you an annual report, And if the select board so choose, you would put it on, the way it's happened is it goes to it goes to RTM, and it's a separate vote. So there's members approving their budget, there's the request that they'll make to the select board, and then there is ultimately RTM voting.
Okay, thanks. Board members, any other comments, questions, thoughts? Okay, Franz?
Well, I think this could go either way and probably work just fine. So I'm asking myself, is there some value in making it explicit that every 5 or 8 years, we actually do go through some formal process? Having not really thought about this much up until right now, it's hard for me to say, oh, it's got to be this way or it's got to be that way. But my sort of slight preference at this point is, well, let's have them come back and talk to us every 5 or 8 years, whichever it is, and just make sure that everything's still going the way it should. I mean, that would be my preference, but I can't say I have a real strong reason to back it up.
Okay, Sue?
So I would think annually, the downtown organization will always come before the select board and talk to you. If you're talking the vote, that's probably going to be something that the planning department or, that we undertake. We would do that however many years, however many years you want us to do that, and then we would bring that back. That's not really the downtown organization's requirement. It's more of the town taking a pulse of those properties that have the special assessment on it.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
thank you. Liz?
So I'm hearing that the DBA will still come to the select board once a year.
Yes.
And if the DBA wants more money, which they want to do, they'll come and ask for it. And then the rest of it is within the confines of the structure that the DBA has, which has a voting structure.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Dick?
When is the last time that the town took a vote of the members of the district to see if they wanted to stay in the district?
Sue, any idea?
I'm going to guess that it was probably 2018 because that's the last time we were redesignated, but don't hold me firm to that. It may have been 2017. It was around that time of reapplication.
Okay.
I guess my comment would be is that I think that was done at town meeting, because town meeting's the one that has to approve us staying in the district. And that this provision here that we're talking about is for the building owner specifically. It's not for town meeting. And so the question is, when is the last time the owners of the building, which I believe are 83, unless there's been a new building that has been built, have had the opportunity to vote on? I know that it was done way back, I believe, maybe around 2010, somewhere around in there, give a few years. But I don't think it has been done, which the town is supposed to do. It's not supposed to be, I don't think it's DBA or /BAB's responsibility. It's the town's responsibility to do that, and I believe that they have failed to do so. And so, therefore, I hope someone says, let's take this out and let's have this vote to find out when it was last taken, and then get a vote and continue to have it every 5 to 8 years, whatever number works for you.
Okay, thanks. Sue, any idea when that
Yes, 2017 or 2018. I seem to recall it was done with the property owners. I would have to verify that
Okay, very good.
tomorrow, but
Okay.
it was not. It has been done at some point when I've been working
Yeah,
for the
okay.
town.
So I think the question really is, does the select board want to continue with this ordinance change tonight, or does the select board want to see something different happen? Or do we need more information?
I think we need more information.
And what information would you like?
To understand the questioning of Mr. DeGray and what that means for the regulations that Sue's responding to.
Okay, so we're talking about more understanding of like how the assessed parties of the downtown improvement district can have a say.
Voice, yeah.
Sue, I'm sensing some thoughts on that, or no? My kind of feeling right now is that this is not absolutely critical that this happens tonight. If it needs a little bit more time to explore further,
Yeah.
that could always happen, so long as we give decent direction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Other board members? Richard?
So, I'm just wondering, so does this mean you probably have to have this, any kind of changes reviewed by the town attorney? Or is it a legal issue, or is it just this act here, if it changes, we can do that on our own?
The
I
town
mean-
attorney has reviewed this.
Right. And also, like, the thing that has come out is a requirement that's no longer required by statute, right? But that doesn't mean that the town couldn't have part of its ordinance say, every so-and-so often a thing will happen a bit like that.
Yep.
Right? It's really what the board wants to do here. I think we heard some feedback. You know, I think this is what happens with ordinance changes. The first reading is like, oh, the town wants to do this. And then the second reading, people come and they have some thoughts about it. And so we don't have to proceed with this tonight if we're not ready to. But we just need to give some clear direction about what is needed for it to come back. Any further
I think you
thoughts?
expressed my concerns,
Okay.
certainly better than I did, so.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm not saying Susan's wrong, but I was a building owner up until this past year, and I don't remember taking that vote in 2018, not to say that it didn't happen.
I gotta tell you, there's a lot of things I didn't remember from like
Yeah.
this
And
morning.
I would say it was likely not a formal kind of a, it may have been an informal vote.
I see some hands raised. I see the town clerk's hand. I see the assistant town manager's hand. Patrick?
Yes, sir. So it did occur in 2018, and
Yeah.
it was administered through the town clerk's office, and,
Great.
you know, that did occur.
And there is a record of that somewhere in the town clerk's office.
You
There
know,
will be,
I
surely.
don't know the length of time for which that sort of thing needs to be
Hillary's hand has gone up and
kept,
down.
but
I think we should
suspect
recognize her and-
I know someone who does.
Hear it from first-hand source. Hillary Francis, town clerk, you are interrogated, it seems.
Hello, can everybody hear me?
It's really quiet. I don't know if that's you or BCTV.
No.
It's very, very quiet.
Okay. Sorry, I'm
Getting better.
doing my best. So, yes, it was in 2018, and I do have a record of that on my computer. We have mail merge labels. We have the results, and it went to the select board in 2018, the results.
Okay. And so, I guess, I opened my mouth before I finished my thought. I'm kind of
So
wondering, like,
let's just wait, review this information, tell us about it next time, we'll decide.
okay, board, is that your pleasure? John?
So I just want to be clear
Yeah.
about this. So are you looking for language within the statutory framework that would allow you to poll the members and outside of the DBA's own bylaws?
Yes.
Okay. And that, you
And-
would like
and I
some,
think, the audience members are asking, not just for members, but for property owners who are
Property
being
owners, yeah.
assessed.
Like those who are assessed.
I can't hear Liz.
Yeah, Liz, you're gonna need to
Oh,
speak up.
I'm sorry. I think that the public present is asking not just for the DBA members, but for the property owners who are being assessed to have a say.
like a
what
regular
this
mechanism.
That is what the vote is for, just
Right.
for the property owners that
So-
are assessed.
So my question is, absent that requirement in statute for a redesignation, is there a mechanism for a regular vote?
That's,
Yeah.
okay. That's what I was trying to get at.
Right.
Yeah.
And are you
so
all,
is the answer to that question yes? Or does it need to be written
It-
in this ordinance?
if the town attorney finds us a way that you have any authority there,
Uh-huh.
we will bring back
you.
language
It's always
for
good to
you
know
to
if you have the
consider,
authority to do things.
for you to consider whether you want to include that in this or not.
Okay.
We can also bring back an estimate of the cost to do something like that, in case you're interested in the cost of gathering that information.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
Board, what do you think?
Would you like
You
some
wanted
more?
to come back with that bit of information?
Yes.
I think we're leaning
Public,
that way.
do you feel satisfied? Yeah, okay. Very good. Okay, then that's what we'll do.
Okay.
Thank you, Sue Fillion. Thank you, members of the DBA, Kate, who came on Zoom. And I guess that's what we're doing. All right, so the next thing that we're moving on to is the FY26 budget development process. John, we didn't talk about how we do this. I'm
Yeah.
going to say that you'll
I can kick
summarize
us
the memo.
off if you would like that. So this follow-up is to your meeting of December 17th, where the board went through a list of about 58 different possible reductions or revenue increases. You went through all those. They are summarized, or they're the ones that we heard that you adopted are summarized in attachment A, I believe, of your backup materials. And then what we did was we took all of those reductions and revenue increases and we put them into a budget format, which is attachment B, and also in the form of a revised capital plan, because a number of the items related to your capital plan, and that is included as attachment C in the memo. And then finally, attachment D shows the detailed budget assumptions that how we incorporated the impact of all those reductions.
We
So-
go all the way up to F.
Yes, those are the first four attachments. I'll talk about the other two in a second. So doing all of that, the revised budget shows an estimated total expenditure for FY26 of just over $25 million. This is a cost for services of $2,080 per capita in Brattleboro, which is still about 8 to 10% lower than neighboring communities. This is a budget that would provide over 240 essential and quality of life municipal services that people value. And these are included in the memo in attachment E, is a list of all of the things that the town departments deliver to people in Brattleboro. And they include a 56-hour-per-week library, many excellent recreation and park services, a top-notch town clerk's office, 20 or more state-leading planning services, town-wide composting, trash, and recycling collection and disposal, maintenance of over 90 miles of roads, 35 miles of sidewalks, a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week all-hazards fire and emergency response service, including fast-responding medical transport, and a premier police department. Happy to go into any of those services in attachment E if the board would like to discuss what is entailed in all of that work that the town provides to residents and visitors. So the cost to deliver all of these municipal services is projected to increase by 9.2% from FY25 to FY26. These increases would allow the town to continue a solid waste program that Brattleboro has been paying for at below market rates for many years. It will support police services for the Downtown Safety Action Plan in an effort to reduce the chaos and disorder that we've seen downtown in the summer of 2024. And it will increase human services grants by over $93,000. These are investments in the community that will contribute to longer-term benefits. In order to deliver on these, we would need to raise $19,841,000 in property tax revenues, and that translates to a municipal property tax rate estimate of $1,628 per $100,000 of assessed value, which is $175 more per $100,000 than this current year. Included in the memo in Table 1 is how that estimated tax increase would play out to people in various scenarios of a range of household income and a range of assessed value on their property. And you can see by this table on page 21 of the packet that half of all taxpayers would see an increase in the property tax of $321 or less. That would be the increase. To deliver all of those services that I talked about, including the full-service solid waste program, additional police services for the Downtown Safety Action Plan, and the $93,000 increase in human services grants by the town. I want to note that within this tax increase, and for people with properties that are 200% of the median value in town, so $366,000, they would see an increase of about $643. So while half of the town will see $321 increase or less, some people will see a more significant increase. I do want to note for you, as you recall from our conversations around the solid waste program, that this tax increase includes a significant amount of trash service costs that are avoided per household. So by the town having the trash collection and disposal as part of this budget means that each household is saving the cost of having to get rid of that themselves, which we believe is more in the neighborhood of around, $4 or $5, maybe even $600 per household. So with this $600 increase on the 200% median household, they're also likely seeing about a $600 savings where they wouldn't have to get rid of their trash themselves, like $50 a month, something like that. So not only do individuals benefit for avoided cost in each household, I want to emphasize that by supporting a budget like this, you're supporting the collective benefit of municipal services that helps ensure a thriving, healthy, well-maintained community for everyone. The question of further reductions came up, and one of the things that you talked about at the December 17th meeting was, would you want to do anything with human services funding? So what I mentioned at that meeting was that one possibility is that you could go to the town meeting, the representative town meeting, and see if a reduction of, like, just to use a number, 1% of the amount that they directed you to put into the budget for FY26 could be reduced. That would be approximately $230,000, a little more, and would bring that tax rate of $16.28 per 100,000 down to $16.09 per 100,000. But that would mean that there would have to be a proportional lowering of support to Brattleboro nonprofits, so there would definitely be an impact. We did at the request of somebody, we started looking at what other towns are doing for human services funding, and we found out, we talked with 3 towns, South Burlington, that gives $15,000 annually in human services, social service provider funding. Winooski, which does none at this point, they did away with this line a few years ago. And Montpelier, which has moved their $134,000 that they use for this purpose in community funding out of the budget to be considered at the ballot instead, as a separate item. Then the question is, so say you were able to do all of that and got it to $1,609 per 100,000 of assessed value, is that not enough? Then, the only other thing that we have is you could revisit the list, which is included in attachment F, which is an additional 1.1 million in budget reductions that you weren't comfortable with going last time, but maybe you might want to revisit those. That could reduce the property tax rate by another $88 on that 1,609, so it would bring it under $1,600. So I think the questions tonight are, is there anything you want to explore further for generating this budget estimate that we would bring to town meeting? Do you need further feedback before you can decide on a budget amount? And how would you like to proceed?
Great, thanks, John. I'm gonna speak first, if you don't mind. So when we were presented with this base budget, how long ago now? A little while back. It was, in some ways a surprise. In other ways, we knew that we had taken some action in the fall to address urgent public safety concerns. We knew that that would have a budgetary impact. We knew that we were likely to take action pretty soon on the solid waste contract, and we knew that that would have an impact. When we saw the budget and we saw the tax rate increase, 22% was hard to swallow, right? And so we took that in and sat with it for a couple of days, and then we had a meeting. And in that first meeting, we expressed a desire to see the budget be reduced, but also to preserve the actions that we'd taken around public safety, and to really honor the very recently taken action around our solid waste contract. And so we didn't say specifically what to do. We said, cut the budget by 10%, cut it by 5%, bring it back to us, show us the implications of that. And so the staff worked really hard over several weeks and collaboratively to bring back a slate of possible reductions to the budget, which the board then considered in its last meeting, and we reduced the budget by almost $2 million in that meeting. That has been computed and presented to us, and so now instead of a 22% tax increase, you're looking at a 12% tax increase. And so I think that, you could sell that one way or another, right? That is good work that's been done by the town staff. It's responsive to the community, it's responsive to the board, and it's, a significant reduction in our budget. It still preserves really the essential services that we provide, plus some new projects that were undertaken in public safety, and a solid waste contract that, quite frankly, when you compare it to the private market, whilst it's vastly larger than our previous contract, I know several people that are paying private market rates for waste haulage, and we are getting a better deal than they are. So my question for the rest of the select board is this budget a budget that you're willing to move forward with, or is there something further or different that you would like to see? Richard, you had your hand up first, so go right ahead.
I want to offer my perspective on, I think it's very important to have perspective on this because it's such a complicated issue. You know, otherwise you run the risk of becoming the parable with the blind people and the elephant, you know, they're trying to figure out what's going on and they don't know.
Would you speak up a little bit?
Okay.
Thanks.
So, you know, the people of Brattleboro elected the members of the Select Board to be their representatives in matters relating to town government. And we don't take the trust you put in us lightly. When issues come before the board, we make every effort to gather as much input as possible from anyone who wants to comment. We listen and we gather facts and we make decisions. Formulating a town budget is a complicated matter, and I've been trying to put things into perspective so that I can make decisions based on the best available information, common sense, and 75 years of life experience. And I've tried to compare Brattleboro to other towns in Vermont as well as towns in New Hampshire and Massachusetts. And while one can look at populations as a marker, it often does not provide accurate comparison. There are 12,000 people in Brattleboro. Essex, Vermont has 11,462, and in no way comparable to Brattleboro. Rutland City has 15,630 people, and in comparison with that town would not be useful, I don't think. And Keene, New Hampshire has almost double of our population, 22,905, and Greenfield is 17,674. So, and Brattleboro should be considered a hub town, and that means we bear an extra financial burden when providing services to people in other Windham County towns. And perhaps someday the Vermont legislature will recognize the fact that and provide us with extra financial support. You know, and some degree of panic set in when it was announced that Brattleboro was facing a 22% increase in property taxes. The Select Board, with the heavy lifting of town managers and staff, have helped to trim $2 million from the budget. My research has determined that of the 10 town manager salaries, 6 are below the state average. 3 are equal to the state average, and 1 is above the state average. If all managers had salaries at the state average, the town would be paying $129,000 more per year than it does now. When these positions need to be filled, it can be difficult when the salary is below average. People of Brattleboro receive high-quality services for their tax dollars. And it's my opinion that if we cut personnel or if we cut essential services, we will end up paying more in the short and long run and end up with a town that is less safe and with a message that the quality of life in Brattleboro is not as important as lower taxes and fewer services. If we actually look at the numbers in the revised budget, it's clear we have a progressive form of taxation, and those who have more pay more. That has always been the case in the entire state of Vermont. As Vermonters, we have made a commitment to our neighbors to lift up those who need help while asking for those with more to give more. Under our revised budget, if your homestead is valued at 100% of the median, or $183, and your income is 100% of median at $45,000, you would see no increase in your taxes. That's zero increase. If that same household has an income above $67,500, their tax increase would be $321. A homestead value of $275,000 would increase taxes by $482, no matter the income, and a homestead value of $366,000 would have an increase of $643, no matter the income. These numbers do reflect variables that could change, and we do not know the costs of the education component of our taxes. Many people fear that taxes will rise so high they won't be able to live here. We have little control over the factors that rule our lives in 2025. We do what we can on the local level, but we simply cannot expect to pay less next year for a new fire truck or a new bucket loader or any of the supplies needed to maintain those vehicles. The tax implications of the revised budget will be difficult for many. This is the price we pay for doing no harm while making sure we have a safe community that has an eye toward the future.
Okay, thank you. Other board members, thoughts on this budget that's before us? Elizabeth?
My comments are in 2 parts. One is much more specific, and then I have summary remarks. So what I would like to discuss now are these individual items. First, I would like to see if anyone wants to give licenses to cats. as a,
That's where you started.
that's where I'm starting.
That's quite an opener. All right.
Cat
Is
licenses.
that my birthday present?
Yeah.
Okay.
But also, one of the goals that we have in terms of revenue sharing, in going over the budget line by line, I noticed that we have a state current use payment of $200,000. That's not enough, and I'm asking the town manager to look into what we can do to get more revenue from the state. I also think that we select board members should consider non-residential fees for increase for the library and for recreation. Also, on page 69 of our packet, it's kind of referring to things that we discussed last time. It's been my experience that employees have discussed with me that they would be happy with reducing the employee recognition fund because they would rather keep their jobs. And the traffic safety budget, although I'm a member of the traffic safety committee, I understand that is not an essential budget item, so if you want to cut that, that would be fine with me. And also reducing bus service. I understand that if we reduced our contribution to bus service, it would have an impact on Saturday service. And so we can decide whether or not we could live with that as a service or not, or maybe we could cut that $50,000 in half. So those are my immediate goals. And I would just want to comment that in reading the comments of public in the past, I think the time to complain about the sustainability coordinator job, which is the only job that has been taken upon the town from outside of the staff and the select board, I think the time for grumbling about that has passed. The sustainability coordinator takes in more money than he's paid out, and I think he's doing a good job. And the communications coordinator is doing an excellent job of something that the select board has specifically asked for, greater communication of town efforts. And I know that the staff values his work in augmenting their own. And finally, with regard to the police, nobody likes to talk about the crime. The chief of police comes here and people say, oh, don't talk about it, which is, ridiculous. And so I want the police to do their job, and we asked Chief Hardy to come up with a plan for attending to the chaos and the crime in downtown, and she has done so. And she has done so in an innovative way that has cops without guns, which is exactly what the community safety report asked for. So in putting all of this together, she's done a commendable job. I fully support it. And I don't think that we can slice and dice it and get that on the cheap. This is what we asked her to do, and the select board is behind it, and I think we're going to have to pay for it. And that's it for my short-term goals, but I wondered if my colleagues were interested in any of those revenue.
Taxing cats.
Taxing cats, yes.
I wrote them down.
Yes.
Let's hear from others. Maybe we'll have a little slate of
Yeah.
things to consider shortly.
And then I have overall comments that I'll make later.
Oh, those were your
Later.
overall comments?
Those were not my overall
Okay,
comments.
I'll prepare some overall comments later as well.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Peter or Franz?
I'll let Franz go first.
Franz?
I'll go first. Thank you,
Or
Daniel.
next?
Well, I'll let Franz go third.
Yeah. Okay,
Fourth.
go ahead.
Where to start? That's really the question. What we've done so far is to look at a wide range of possible, I'm not sure, adjustments, let's say, to the budget in an attempt to get the tax rate down. I would not say that most of those have actually reduced the spending, but rather a lot of them sort of modify calculations about revenues or defer maintenance to the future, all of which may be appropriate, but they're not the same as saying we cut the budget, at least to my way of thinking. Overall, I've heard two competing narratives of what our situation is here in Brattleboro. One is that the tax increases we're facing are necessary to preserve Brattleboro as a desirable and functional place to live. And the other narrative is that the tax increases will destroy Brattleboro as a desirable and functional place to live. And both of those perspectives are coming from people who I regard as well-informed and intelligent and having some reasons to back up what they say. The problem for me is I don't know which one is true, or which one is more true. I've been trying to think, well, isn't there sort of a middle path here? Isn't there some place we can land that preserves all the stuff that we really need, but takes a little bit harder line on stuff that we can get along without? Not stuff that we don't value, not stuff that isn't worthwhile, but that we can get along without, because a lot of people think that following the path of this budget, even with all the adjustments that we've made, is going to damage the town significantly. I personally don't know if it is or it's not. I don't know which of the, going to Greek mythology, Scylla or Charybdis is the worst option. So I found myself just really torn at this point. At our last meeting, we said we were going to get to talk about things that were not on the list of 58 potential cuts, which we never did. And the reason that we never did was because it was 10:30 at night and everybody was exhausted. But there are other ideas out there that we have not talked about. And there's another factor that we have not talked about, which is the hole we created in our reserve funds, in our unallocated fund balance, by spending that money as part of the FY25 budget. We spent money that we didn't have. Now, that still has to be ratified by town meeting, is my understanding, but what we have not talked about is whether we're going to get our fund balance up to the point where we've had it for quite some time, specifically to deal with potential emergencies. Now, we had there was a long back and forth about that at the meeting where that decision was made. Personally, I would have preferred spending less of it as on an emergency basis, but that's the decision that we made, and it's in pursuit of valuable efforts, I think. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm still really on the fence about this budget. I think it would be worth having a discussion of some what-ifs. And my thinking on this changes practically on a daily basis. For example, the what-if of the Downtown Safety Action Plan, which is something that I support. And I think the idea of the BRAT officers is an excellent idea. As Liz just pointed out, it's actually responsive to the community safety report. But I wonder if a slightly smaller contingent of both the level 2 and level 3 officers could in fact get the job done in a way that would really have a significant impact at a lower cost. I think putting that into effect is problematic at this point. Operationally, it'd be very difficult to make that sort of a change at this date. So again, it's, I just have a lot of questions running around my head, and I don't know where I'm gonna land.
Okay, thanks. Peter?
Yeah. I don't honestly know where to start. I mean, I want to thank Richard for what he said. I thought there was some really good information in that, what Liz said. You know, I would challenge town staff to maybe shout from the rooftops the last time our taxes went down. I don't think that happens. You know, I understand that they might not be increases like what we're seeing this year. We did have an unfortunate year with some mitigating stuff that was far from our control. Some of it was in response to what we were hearing from the community. Some of it was just in response to, well, I mean, finally that wave of solid waste hitting the shore and us being smacked in the face with the realization. You know, and I think John's done a really good job of explaining, like, we can go free market on this, but I think we all sitting in this room kind of know what a free market trash pickup looks like, and it looks messy. It doesn't look good overall, and I'm just talking about the aesthetics. And for those who choose to pay for it, will pay more than if we just roll it into our taxes, and it's just automatic and it'll happen. Competing narratives is just a thing that we deal with day to day. I understand that a tax burden, I pay probably close to $600 a month in property taxes. My taxes are a little over $7,000 a year, and I want to remind anybody that's listening or watching that everybody at this table, all elected officials, pay taxes in this town, so we understand that whatever gets passed, we are agreeing upon for ourselves as well. So it's not that I don't understand it. It's not that I like it. You know, I think that is something that we are unfortunately going to deal with. I don't think people are going to pull up stakes and move out. I don't see that happening. Just to speak to something Franz said about a smaller community action plan thing, I think that if we could have gotten away with a smaller one, that's what would have been presented. So I think right where we are on that is where we need to be. So I guess I'll just stop it there, because I feel pretty strongly about the cuts we've already made. Do we have room for a few more? Yeah. Again, you know where I stand as far as cutting town staff. These people have names. They're not just titles. Okay? I just want to remind everybody about that. These people have names. They do hard work for this town. And we should, once again, hold a little bit to that, and think about what we're saying, that those responsibilities will shift to somebody else, and that creates problems down the line.
Thanks, Peter. Okay, let's hear from the public, and then maybe the select board will have had some feedback that will help them make a decision on what direction they would like to go. Mr. Heller.
Hi there. Oscar Heller, Finance Committee and current chair. First, I want to read to you guys a Finance Committee resolution that you've all seen, but we passed it by a 5-0 vote a couple weeks ago. And just to say that this is coming from a committee that's actually pretty diverse in viewpoints, and I think everyone had their own individual reasons for voting for this, and but it was something we felt strongly about as a committee. So, it's 2 short paragraphs. The Finance Committee is concerned that the Select Board was unwilling to consider staff cuts during its December 17th discussion for reducing the FY26 budget, relying instead on cuts to services and deferrals to FY27. The Finance Committee calls upon the Select Board to instruct the Town Manager to present to the Select Board a list of potential staff cuts to consider for FY26 at its next meeting. We recognize that the concept of staff cuts is painful, but we believe that considering it is an essential part of the responsible management of the town. The Finance Committee is also deeply concerned about the lack of a long-term financial plan. In the interim, we call upon the Select Board to identify cuts and deferrals made during its December 17th meeting that are anticipated to reappear in the FY27 budget. We would like to see this list before the FY26 budget is approved. Ideally, a pro forma budget for FY27 should be included while the FY26 budget is being considered. So I know you've all seen that before. I just want to follow that up with a couple, my personal take on why this is something that I think is important and I keep bringing up at these meetings. And I'm going to try and come at it from a really narrow angle, which is I'm not a small government guy. I am not someone who looks at a big town staff and says, this is obviously a problem, this must be inefficient. I know these people have names. I also think it's a fantastic staff and that everyone we hire is someone who's hired for a reason, and that reason is usually because somebody made a case for them and a bunch of other people said, yes, that's a great idea. I am not coming at this from a perspective of A, I want to cut staff, or B, there are obvious cuts to make. That is not my thing. Here's where I'm coming at this from. This board said 22% is too high, we want to make cuts. Starting from that premise, I feel like the cuts that were presented and accepted are largely of a kind that are just moving the problem until next year. There are a lot of things that are, we are not going to do this for 1 year, or we are going to defer this program or this maintenance. There are a lot of things, well, there are a couple big items that involve savings that are achieved by spending money that is not renewable, right? For example, if there was something in the budget for $200,000 and we paid for it in this fiscal year with $200,000 out of the revolving loan fund, I have a very hard time calling that a savings. That is just us using up a non-renewable resource so that the number is lower. And then finally, there are also, no, I forgot. There are a lot of these items, and what I'm worried about is that it's January, and September 1st is in less than 9 months. All 5 of you could be on the board again next year, and in less than 9 months, you will have next year's budget in front of you with all of the deferrals back on the list because they haven't been cut. All of the options for dealing with those things will have been reduced because those accounts have been partially spent. And I think it's just going to make everyone's lives harder to have a 2-year process instead of a 1 year. So that is why I think we are not setting ourselves up for success by doing it this way.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Oscar. I gave you a little bit more time than usual there. All right, who else would like to speak on this matter? Ms. O'Connor.
Kate O'Connor, Brattleboro. First of all, I want to say I agree with everything that Oscar just said, so I won't rehash that. I'm worried about 2 things. One.
I'm sorry.
Can you speak up a little?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, just you have to speak up.
Oh, I know, but we're having the same problem hearing you guys, so I forget. Kate O'Connor, Brattleboro. I agree with everything that Oscar just said, and I have I have more than 2 things that I'm worried about. But the first is the current and long-term financial viability of our town. Everything you are doing goes against every fiscally responsible practice. And again, I say this as somebody who sat there for 6 years, and I say this as somebody who worked for the governor of Vermont for 11 years and saw budgets from start to finish. We're setting ourselves up for disaster. And when I worked for the state, we had to make some really hard decisions, but we did it, and we did it for the right reasons. You folks before you, there have been a long list of select board members, town managers, and town department heads who've had to make some really, really hard decisions to get our town on a fiscally responsible path. And you folks are blowing it up in a matter of months. So I'm worried about that. I'm also worried about the people who are going to have to pay these taxes. It's not like there's going to be a mass exodus. That's not what I'm worried about. I'm worried about the people that can't afford a 342 or whatever it is tax increase, because it's not just $341. It's $341 plus the $110 that those same people are paying extra because of the tax increase we're doing this year. And that's also on top of the thousands of dollars that people are already paying. And those people, not just the people who work in town government, but the citizens of our community have names as well. And we cannot forget that. And I think that's one of the things that is being totally forgotten here. And over the last meeting and over the last couple of weeks, members of this board have asked me, Kate, what should we cut? And I have been honest and I have told you. So I want to ask you folks, on behalf of all the people, taxpayers and renters who are going to be impacted by this, what should they cut from their household budgets to pay for this tax increase? Do they have to turn their lights off, turn their heat down, buy less, good food, doctors, don't go to the doctor, don't go to the dentist? I'm not exaggerating. Those are real life things. And I think it's really important that you folks, no one has mentioned the people that have to pay these taxes and the burden it is upon them. So I really wish you would look at this again, do what's right, and do it for the people of this community. Thank you.
Thanks, Kate. Other members of the public who wish to speak? Let's go to Gary on Zoom.
Mr. John.
That's from Liz.
Question mark.
Yeah, hi. Stroud District 8 Chair. I just have to reiterate and piggyback off what Kate's saying, because what happens when you do that, you're going to raise more devils you can't take down. You're going to create even more issues, more problems, more homelessness. The government, the state, and this country is already in a major deficit. We don't know what this year's going to hold with our new president, new legislation going up. So that being said, maybe we should take a step back and really do some crunching of the numbers again, because there's only so much state's going to pay for a lot of people with the rent. Now you're creating more homelessness. Now you're going to create more people having to not get jobs, because this is going to trickle down. It's called the trickle down economics effect, sort of during the Reagan era. So I think you could take a step back and really think about that. A lot of people don't own businesses or, have rental buildings that they own. There's a lot of people with fixed income, seniors, veterans. There's a lot of people with disability relying on this. You increasing that is going to offset a lot of things. So I really would like you to really take a step back and really think hard and put yourself in that position and ask yourself, what would you do if you were in their shoes? Thank you. I yield my time.
Other members of the public? Mary?
Mary Delacroix, District 8. I just want to bring up that part of this budget is kind of like shifting shells. Not only did you defer some costs, but you also put more other costs on us residents, like the trash bags, the paid system for $300,000. That wasn't part of the original trash plan. It should be removed again. It's all of our pockets. To build on what Kate said, it's whether it be state taxes, the education tax, this tax, it's all of our pockets. And just like the town fund being depleted, our savings are being depleted as well. And for these people, which it wouldn't be a $360, your figures were on 9%, but the budget is actually going to increase 12%. So those numbers aren't quite right. But anyway, it all adds up. People, it all adds up. I know you're not responsible for the education tax yet, but we are, and we're going to get another one in the spring. So I would say when you're looking at the budget, don't shift the shell and look for ways to get more money out of the Brattleboro residents. And instead, look for ways to actually pare down the budget, because that's what we need to do in order to be sustainable. I mean, in terms of the town and people leaving, the education cost itself could shift the public's opinion about children and families in a negative direction. And that is kind of a trend across the United States, is education costs rise.
People don't want families in their towns anymore because their kids are too expensive. I know that's not this budget, but we residents are paying for all of it, and it all affects our community. So no more looking for one more dime from the residents.
Thanks, Mary. Just to correct you, the expenditures in the budget went up 9.2%. The property taxes needed to be raised in order to pay for, the budget is not only paid for by property taxes, so that went up 12%. You're welcome. Bob?
Okay.
Yep.
Hello, Bob Ozer, Brattleboro. I just sort of following on what Franz has said and some other people have said. I looked at the reductions, the proposed reductions on attachment A, and did a quick run through them, and there are like 3 or 4 buckets, and the big 3 buckets. The first one is deferrals. And I saw about $383,000 of deferral.
But you're kind of quiet. It's kind of chilly.
I can try. Maybe pull the plug here. Does that work? Okay. So I looked at the reductions in attachment A, and it looked to me like, and trying not to be too judgmental, but that there are 3 or 4 buckets, the big 3 buckets. The first one is deferrals, and about 383,000 in deferrals, meaning that you're taking money out of something that's an active project right now, and you're either deferring it to next year or you're deferring it to another process. So it may actually increase costs if you don't do the maintenance now, if you're going to defer that maintenance. That's an example. The other bucket was replacements. And I guess the other way of saying replacements is robbing Peter to pay Paul, taking money out of a balance fund to pay for something now, and you're not going to have that money in the future if you need it for emergency. I think people have talked about that. Again, if maybe I'm being judgmental, but about 657,000 attributed to that. And then, as Mary pointed out, chargebacks was another bucket, and about 372,000 in chargebacks. The pay-as-you-throw bags, the charges back to residents for other services. So those 3 big buckets together is about $1.4 million. So that's about most of the reductions. The reductions are 1.7, I think. So maybe a closer look at those. That's my back of the envelope scribbling on those reductions. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Let's go to Sarah's iPad. Hi there, if you could just introduce yourself.
Yeah, sorry. Hi there. Sec. Having a little difficulty here. Hang on a second.
We can hear you just fine and see you.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Camera is off. Too much background stuff going on. So, hi, my name is Sarah Gagnon. I live at 41 Clark Avenue in Brattleboro, and I joined the meeting a little bit late, and I just wanted to get clarification on something that the town manager was saying when I joined. So he was talking about some people had asked him to look at other towns and how much they give. Montpelier, and I'm guessing this is for social services, but please correct me if I'm wrong. Montpelier doesn't give anything at this point. It goes to a ballot vote, so the townspeople actually decide. South Burlington gives 15,000, and Winooski gives 0. So what is Brattleboro? Where do we fall in that? I missed what our contribution is.
Okay, I can answer that one. It's $461,000.
Okay. So Brattleboro gives $461,000 per year for a town of 12,000 people.
Yes.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for clarifying that.
Okay, you're welcome. Did you have anything further you wanted to say? No?
She's gone.
Okay. All right, other members of the public who wish to speak? Mr. DeGray.
Probably under redundancy, redundant. Liz made a comment about cutting funding for the mover. That would probably take away service. I think you said from Saturday and Sunday, or just Saturday?
Saturday.
I don't think lifting the tax burden, placing it on the backs of the most vulnerable people who use the bus service is very noble of us. And certainly I don't support that at all. It's funny about this discussion about the downtown. And as I said earlier, I've been out of there. It's almost coming up on a year. I got out of there last March. But the downtown was on fire in 2022 and 23. And the board, some of you weren't on the board, and the town did nothing. You were distracted doing EMS. And then I've said before that you overreacted. The chief has never had 27 police officers. She's going to have them. And it would be nice to see what she does with those police officers before we say, oh, you need 3, why 3? What's the optimum number? Why not 5? Why not 2? Fish, a month ago, said that the downtown had improved. He had people coming up to him and saying that once Officer Washburn was downtown, that things were improving. And getting the Brett team and the Justin on the street, things were getting better. And so here we are, we're in a tax crunch, and you guys are totally entrenched on not reducing those people. I support the police department. All of you do support the police department. That's very evident. But I don't like paying for something that I'm not going to get or I don't know that I need at this point. And that's the sad part about everybody that comes up here. It's like, you're listening, but I don't think you're hearing me. And that's the sad part about all of us who have been following the process. And I'm not saying that you have to agree with everything I say, but I have a pretty good pulse on what's happening in downtown. And I truly believe that hiring 3 officers at this time, and I've said this numerous times, at this time is not the right way to go. And I don't think that if you revisited that, and what happens, I guess I need this question answered. What happens if town meeting rejects the expenditure that you already spent the money, that you need their permission? What happens then? I don't know the answer to that, and if one of you has that answer, please give it to me when I'm done speaking. 9% increase, 10%, 12%, whatever this increase that we're sitting on right here, is not something that the majority of the people in this community can afford. Plain and simple. Just because you live in a house that's valued at $300,000 doesn't mean you have a pocket full of money. There's a lot of people in this community that are property rich. They're property rich and they're pocket poor. And yet we think because you have all this land and you have a home on this land that you have a lot of money, and these increases. And then we're talking about the school tax. And one thing that we don't talk about is the water and sewer tax. Yes, it's an enterprise fund, but it's something that affects the pockets of everybody that uses those services, which is about 95% of our community. So I'm going to ask you not to accept this and to find some cuts, and certainly not registering cats Now, that's something new. I've been around for a long, long time, and I haven't heard that. So you get credit for something ingenious to bring before the board, but I doubt if that's going to happen. But I ask you to do the work and say, you know what? We've got to cut this budget. We've got to get it down to 654. But where we're at is not acceptable to the community. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. I gave you quite a bit extra.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Other members of the public who wish to speak on this matter? Yep.
Amanda Ellis Thurber, District 7. I'm going to disagree with Mr. DeGray. I do think that the 3 officers are needed because I think what we're watching is Chief Hardy doing a very good job shuffling police. The Brat team needs to be supported by 3 armed officers for backup, is my understanding. And in West Brattleboro, where a few of us live, Brattleboro is more than downtown. I haven't seen a police cruiser probably in maybe like, we see one maybe one day in 3 months, right? So our vulnerable people that live on the rural roads, people using Route 9, going up to Mount Snow, we are at risk too, but we feel like everything's going downtown. But we also need to know that if there's a problem, that the police can be responsive, right? And so that's a concern I have. The other one is humorous. Could there be a tax exemption for farms if cats needed to be taxed? Because cats on our farm, they have jobs.
Thank you. Yep. Millicent?
Millicent Cooley, District 9. I have a question. What's the process and what is the cost to the town if the budget gets rejected at RTM?
Okay. Is that all you want to say?
It's a question. I want to know what the process is.
Yeah, but anything else you want to say, and then we can answer that question?
I mean, I agree with what people have said,
Yeah.
but I
Okay.
want to know the answer to this one.
Sure. Okay. We've kicked that question around somewhat. Last time I spoke about it with Patrick, we kind of talked about it like, it's not like you'll leave that meeting with no budget. You'll leave with a budget that the meeting can accept. It might not be the same size of budget that is on the warning. So like, if that figure won't pass, someone's going to amend it, right? Someone's going to propose an amendment, and if that figure doesn't pass, then someone else will propose something else. And the meeting will arrive at a figure that they've decided is the appropriate figure for our general fund budget. Once that happens, it'll come back to town staff, and town staff will need to make that budget work for the next fiscal year. So that's my understanding of it. Patrick, John, am I on the right track?
I think that's a good, fair, I think that's the benefit of having a town meeting where budgets can be discussed, debated, amended, et cetera. I think it is possible technically that in the end, the town meeting does nothing, but why would you choose that? I would imagine, keep at it, get it resolved.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Other members of the public who wish to speak?
Jill Stahl, Tyler, District 7. But you said the town staff would make that decision? It's the select board that makes the decision? If the money comes back at the budget?
Well, I don't know. Maybe there's a little more nuance to it. So the town manager is, by charter, responsible for the administration and operations of the town. And manages all of the department heads who manage their own departments. The select board is responsible for policy setting. So, if the meeting were to say, cut this budget by $3 million for this particular purpose, that would be advisory to the select board. The select board, I think, is wise to listen to the advice of the majority of a meeting, right? And then could sort of give that same policy direction to the town administration and say, do this. But, you know, the actual running and operating and working of all of this budget is town staff. You wouldn't want amateurs to be doing that work. Answer your question? Okay, other members of the public who wish to speak? Oh, you got 2 extra minutes. Go on then, go ahead. 30 seconds.
That's even less than I need.
Yeah.
I would actually like the budget after town meeting. I would like at least 50 representatives to sign the petition to have the budget go to the voters in the town of Brattleboro. That way we would find out if the select board and town meeting members are doing a job that the voters of this community are approving of.
Okay, that is your right, and if that happens, then that happens. Okay. All right, so I think we've heard plenty of feedback. I think the board's had some time to ponder that, hopefully. And so what I'm looking for is some direction. For disparate things from the board members, I don't think there's any obvious consensus right now. You know, does the board want to look at specific things to cut or specific new revenue lines to add? Does the board feel that this budget is what they were asking for? You know, when they asked the town administration to come back, and I want to kind of like, I don't know, somebody said this somewhere along the way about like cutting the general fund budget. I wrote it down somewhere. Not the same as like, you know, what we asked for is a reduction in the budget of 10% and 5%. And we were provided with that information and sort of given a pathway to get there. And then we had a meeting where we considered all of the various component pieces of that pathway and made decisions about them. And so what we did was we reduced the general fund budget by, I don't know what the actual percentage is, but the tax rate implication is it reduced the tax rate increase from 22% to 12%. Not nothing. But I also hear from the public that a 12% tax increase is still something that they're very concerned about. So the question for us all here is, what do you want to do about that? And so I will leave it at that. Elizabeth.
Okay. So one thing that hasn't been discussed is the Homestead Rebate Act and its effect on Brattleboro taxpayers. I think it's very important to understand that this is one of the few state actions that has the effect of lowering the tax burden, specifically for those who can least afford it. And as we know, Brattleboro's taxes are high. They're higher than the surrounding towns. I'm advocating for a definite push to get revenue sharing. But what the Homestead Rebate Act is revenue sharing from the state at an individual homeowner level. And I think that when we have a budget, we should also be laser focused on making sure that everybody who's eligible for this applies for it, because that'll do several things. It will reduce people's tax burden significantly. It will show how much of a really hardscrabble town we are, that this many people really need help in terms of the Homestead Rebate Act, and also be a symbol not only for within our town, but directed to the state to show that Brattleboro needs help in additional revenue sharing for the burden that the state of Vermont has placed on the town of Brattleboro and other host communities. So, first of all, that's number one. And I think that we have to see people's pleas to the taxpayer in light of the effect of the Homestead Rebate Act on individual property owners. The other thing is that, and I think other select board members have said the same, but you know, I've been on the finance committee. I've looked at the budget from that perspective, but I've also been a select board member. This is my 6th year. So there's a difference from my perspective of being on the select board. And I know that there's people who've been on the select board and are looking from the outside, but we have a responsibility not just to a paper budget, but you know, to the taxpayers, but also to the type of community that we want and the overall community health. And I believe that the budget that we have meets the needs of the overall community health. I would say that if we have now reduced the tax burden to an increase of approximately 12%, and then we say to RTM, you know, do you really want 2% of our taxes to go to human services, or do you want to reduce that? That will reduce the tax burden to our community, and we all need to think long and hard of our responsibilities in that regard. So I'm in favor of this budget. I don't know if we can give cats licenses, but, and any of these other little things, they're little tweaks, but if we want to do them, that would be great. But I think that the select board role is not just to pass a budget, but to be responsible for the scope of services in our town. And I think that what we've presented here is necessary, and I support it.
Okay. All right. So that's a clear position. So Liz is saying this is a budget that I can live with. All right. And I think I heard that from Richard earlier.
Yeah, I really can live with it. Nothing's perfect. But I also want to make a comment about personnel cuts. And there's certain people that have, the finance committee seems to think that's the way to go. But I'm trying to think, okay, it's a difficult decision and it has a lot of implications. But another way to look at it is, if you worked in a town where you thought you were going to lose your job any minute because you didn't know who's going to get the axe, what kind of morale situation are you setting up? I certainly wouldn't want to work somewhere where, you know, I didn't one day to the next whether I could pay my bills because I'm going to lose my job. I think we owe it to the people of this town that work for the town. They've created an incredibly stable town government and a stable workforce to get things done. And to put them in the position of basically hanging them out to dry and saying, well, for the good of everybody else, we're going to have to get rid of you. I have a lot of trouble with that, and I think we have to, this is another way to look at it. You have to put yourself in the shoes of other people sometimes, and I understand that the money and the taxes, it's a horrible burden for a lot of people, but we also have a significant workforce in this town. I think it was like 155 people that work for the town. That's a lot of people. Those people support our economy. They do their business here in town. They buy groceries here. They pay their taxes. Maybe not all of them live here, but they do commerce here. So when I made my comments earlier about perspective, this is what I meant, is that you have to look at the bigger picture. If you don't, you're doing a disservice to everybody. And I do support the budget.
Okay, thank you. I'll just jump in for a minute. So I think, you know, we can sort of categorize some of the critiques of this current, you know, revised budget in maybe a few different ways, right? I forget who it was, Bob, I think, gave a few different buckets. So one is saying you have deferred some things to a future year. Some people are saying deferred to next year. I've been around long enough to know that deferred to next year does not mean to next year. You know, there are plenty of things that got deferred that we've still been dealing with, you know, the last several years that were deferred maybe a decade ago. I don't think deferrals are great for our town. You know, there's a lot of deferred maintenance on this building. One of the reasons why this room is so cold today is maybe because some building envelope things and, you know, heating system things have not been attended to over the years. I think it really depends on how you view the challenge of this budget, right? This was a 22% tax increase that was, as I said before, hard to take, and we asked for a reduction in the budget for this year. Now, you can absolutely critique the reductions that the staff have proposed. You can say that they're only good for 1 year, and, you know, most people on this board only have a 1-year term. There is an election coming up in March. I'm sure that the state of the town budget, amongst other issues, will be a driving thing for people that choose to run. It'll also be a driving thing for the voters. So the select board that is in place this time next year will look different, I'm sure. And they will have different priorities and they will make different decisions. We are not responsible for next year's budget at this time. Okay, we are responsible for this year's budget. And so by making cuts in a variety of places, how many, 50-something places that we made? You know, that is continuing to provide a good level of service through staffing. It's making some operational cuts, it's shifting some things here or there, it's deferring some things. But I think it preserves an excellent level of service for another 12 months from July 1. So I hear the critique. I think it's like reasonable. I understand where it's coming from. I just don't feel like I am responsible for the FY27 budget, okay? And that's just my opinion. The question of considering staff cuts. So, Kate, you did provide us a list. I will just name them. So you proposed that we cut the sustainability coordinator position, the communications coordinator position, and not hire the 3 additional officers that were part of the Downtown Safety Action Plan. I think that Liz spoke to the sustainability coordinator bringing in more revenue than that position actually costs. The communications coordinator is adding a lot of value, I think, to the town. And quite frankly, in the next year when we have a new solid waste system, we're gonna really need excellent communications to make sure that that goes well. The recent parking system changes have been challenging, and you know, the communications coordinator has been involved in some messaging around that to improve that situation. So the savings from those 2 positions, I don't think have enough of a benefit. The 3 police officers, the case was made back in August, and I also appreciate the critique of, hey, you guys made decisions in August that would impact this budget, and that wasn't prudent from a fiscal point of view. And I hear you, and I've heard other critiques that it was hasty or an overreaction. Sitting here all summer long with more people in this room than I've ever seen before, feeling that our town was out of control. We were responsive to that. We took action. We took action really about as quickly as we could have. And the reason why those 3 officers, you know, got, I mean, not exactly funded, right? We knew that it was going to be in this budget, was because of timeline. If we were to wait until this budget was passed before we said go ahead and proceed with that plan, it would have delayed that plan even further. So the 5 positions that are proposed to be cut, I don't see the benefit in them other than savings. And so my question to the rest of the board is, are there 3 people on this board that want to see staff cuts come before them at a future meeting. We've got potentially maybe 3 more meetings where we could discuss this budget. I'll leave it there for now.
Can I,
Yeah.
So, to maybe labor it a little bit more, Liz brought up some really good points in a homestead rebate tax, some revenue sharing, which are all really good things. And instead of cutting people, I think we can charge them to do more. I've made the comment before that some years ago, like 10 members of the staff were cut, and I feel like we're just sort of back there again, right? And here we are looking at more taxes. I'm sure those positions have been replaced or been recreated and reapportioned, repositioned to something else different. So instead of looking at cutting our our communications director, perhaps we charge him with a way to communicate how home state rebate taxes can be sought out. Perhaps that's a help that we already have. Perhaps our sustainability coordinator can help with those efforts. These are the ways that we are not using our staff, that we should be using our staff, that will pay immediate dividends. And it's not anything that we will kick down the road. That's how this works. We don't cut people just because you want to save $10 on your taxes, because that's about what this amounts to in just those 2 positions. And I think, again, if Chief Hardy thought she could do this with 1 additional officer or 2 additional officers, that's what she would propose. This is her line of work, her area of expertise. So we take her at her area of expertise in her long, vast, stellar career, and we take her at her word, and if this is what she says we need, then I believe it. I think we also all have a unique ability to forget the pain we were in July and in August, as Daniel pointed out, with 100 people or more in 3 or 4 meetings in a row, right? I couldn't walk up and down the street and get a 1/10 of a mile up the street and back to my shop in under an hour and a half with the amount of people that would talk to me about what our downtown looked like. And I think we forget that and how hot of an issue that was. Now it has calmed down. It has calmed down in large part because of the job Chief Hardy has done and this body that sits before you have done in making decisions to calm that down. And it's been successful, and I'm proud of that work that we've done. So I think we need to remember that. So with that, I'm in favor of the budget that we have presented.
Okay, great. Franz, you want to weigh in?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Daniel. In fact, I want to comment a little bit on something that Oscar was talking about in terms of looking towards the future. I think one thing that certainly all of us on the board can agree is that this is really a difficult process that we're going through. And I think it'd be wise to learn from the difficulty and try to maybe forestall some difficulties in the future. And the way that we can do that is by better anticipating what's coming down the road. You know, I made just a little list of positions that have been added in the past few years, and town government has expanded considerably for good reasons. But some things we failed to anticipate were that our solid waste contract was going to triple in cost. We didn't anticipate the need to expand the police department to address problems in the downtown. And maybe if we had anticipated that our expenses were going to be going up significantly over the period of a few years, we would have made some different spending decisions in the past. You know, there are a lot of positions that we have that I think are very valuable, but we might not have added some of them if we had had a clearer vision of what was coming financially for the town. And so basically what I'm saying is, yes, we do need to look very carefully at the future implications of the decisions we're making now. It's not enough to say, oh, we'll make it through this year, because we will make it through this year. If we went the whole 22% increase, we would have made it through the next year. But the question is, what are we setting ourselves up for the future, and what's it going to take to address those issues in the future? The thing I come back to again and again is that we spend our unallocated fund balance. that has been, you know, in my experience, 5 years on the finance committee and now a couple on the select board, that was like the sacrosanct level that, you know, you don't go below 10%. I mean, at one point, we went down to like, what, 9.3% or something, and it was like this big deal, you know. But we spent $675,000 of that money that we don't have any plan to replace. Those are the kinds of things that we need to be anticipating, need to be thinking about for the future, and see what the impact is going to be when we get to the point where we address those issues. And the same is true of deferred maintenance, and the same is true of spending down the revolving loan fund so that that's not available if we need it for something. So we're making very important decisions that have real implications for the future. We are going to make it through FY26, and, you know, we'll do what we have to do, whoever's on the board then. But I think it's a mistake to set ourselves up for problems if we have a way to avoid that.
So what would you propose?
What would I propose? I'm not going to propose any other specific cuts at this point. I just don't have anything that I think is workable. I think the time to have those discussions is past. I think the discussion of, you know, for example, I hate to harp on Chief Hardy and the police department, but I don't think we ever heard clearly what our choices were. Yes, the chief decided this is what we needed. We need the 30 officers, we need the Brat team, we need Justin and the data analyst, and, you know, I like every single piece of that, but we never actually heard what if. What if we're at, you know, 28 officers instead of 30? What if we have 3 Brat team members instead of 4? I'm not suggesting that we change that at this point, because I don't think it's doable in many ways. But I think that kind of thinking is what we need more of in advance as we're moving forward. And I hope that we can really grapple with those issues, whatever budget we end up adopting this year.
Okay. Would you like to hear about that right now from the chief?
Well, no. I mean, I'd be happy to hear about it sometime. I don't want to, do others want to hear about that? I've already been down that road enough to understand what I think it would be like. But
I'm just trying to understand the question, because
yeah, well,
sounds like
I'm
you
not
want to hear
asking.
about it.
I'm not really posing this as a question. I'm saying that what we need is to not take our eyes off the effects on future budgets and the future town of Brattleboro in terms of what we're doing here today. And I want to put that down as an important principle that we need to respect.
Okay. All right. So it seems like then, absent some other suggestions, that this board is going to proceed with this budget in this form, and unless there's anything further to say, I think that's kind of the end of it.
Yep.
Okay. Amanda?
Daniel, just we didn't really consider some of Liz's suggestions. And
I know.
Do we want to
and
pursue
I feel
that?
like in absence of people voicing any support for them, I think that is the consideration that they got.
They weren't major things,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, it wasn't a lot of money, but
Yeah, I mean,
I thought they were
I think
reasonable.
people will speak up if they want to sign on for any of those things.
How many cats are there in Brattleboro?
Let's hear from Amanda.
You don't want to know.
Minus farm cats.
Yeah.
Amanda, District 7. This is reiterating a point of Liz's, the revenue sharing with the state. We are the welcome mat for the state of Vermont, from people coming from the south. And I'd love to see some revenue sharing for the state on that. And that would support, and with that welcome mat, can be more policing. That's a nuanced thing to say, but that is true. And that's important. It's important for our state to support that. The other thing is with the sustainability coordinator position, in terms of, so I run a small business, I run a farm. We've had to tighten our belts a lot over the last 7 years, right? And so I agree the infrastructure of having a sustainability coordinator is vital. that output of that individual for getting grants for Department of Public Works, for getting grants for the pool, like for healthy activities for children and families and beyond just the environmental impact, right? So that job of a sustainability coordinator is a sustainability of our town, of our community. And so when we talk about jobs in our town government, that their primary function is getting grants, that should be aggressively attacked right now. And that is our town manager to say, okay, these are my expectations, this is where we need to be, this is how much revenue we need to earn, and let's do it. And let's do it quickly, and let's do it now, because as we know, our federal funding situation is changing dramatically, and our state changing dramatically. We have a vibrant New England area, so maybe there's grants, but that's that person's job, and they need to do it well.
Great, thank you. I just want to kind of alert the board to one other sort of consideration that we need to make tonight. So, you know, let me put my thoughts in order first of all. So one proposal from town staff in this process that they would do a series of focus groups with town meeting members, and that they could bring feedback from those focus groups to the board for consideration on a meeting on January 21st. So that would then give us time to absorb that feedback and consider this budget some further on the 28th. Elizabeth?
I don't agree with that, because there's regular order in this process, and the process is that anyone from the public and RTM members don't have a greater say in coming to a select board member, coming to a select board meeting and having their say. So this is the process that the select board takes. We take input from the community. We present the budget to town meeting, and that's where town meeting has their say. So I think obviously RTM members are represented here this evening, and that should be sufficient.
Okay. Other board members? No? Any interest?
Oh, I think decisions have basically been made. I don't know what additional input we need at this point.
Okay.
I'm hearing that the people on the board, our minds are made up. That's what I'm hearing.
Okay.
At least a majority.
All right, fine. Oscar, and then we'll go to Prudence, David, and Dick, and then we'll see where we're at.
Hi, Oscar Heller, Finance Committee. Just two technical questions or clarifications that I don't need an answer for right now, but that I wanted to put in. Just wanted to clarify, when you spent the fund balance on the downtown stuff last year, there was a plan to use, I think, the leftover, or the savings from the William Street grant to help pay down some of the fund balance we were using. That is now being spent on savings in some of these budget drawdowns. So I wanted to confirm that that's right, and that presumably that money is no longer going back into the emergency fund. And Ron's is nodding, people, okay.
I'm nodding
Daniel's
that
nodding.
I've heard your question.
Okay.
And I'm looking to John to,
So you want?
yeah, would you mind speaking to that?
The proposal is to use that funding to keep the tax rate down. So
Okay.
whether it's one or the other, it would be the same effect. So what we're proposing is we would do it as part of the budget process.
Okay. And then I'm still a little hazy on the details of the pay-as-you-throw bag program. I don't know if there's been more detail about it that I've missed, but it's a big chunk of the thing, and I'm sort of confused how it would even conceptually work. So I would love to know more about that at some point.
Yeah, we spoke about that privately at lunchtime today, and yes, there's things to be worked out there. So this is a plan. A budget is a plan, right?
Yeah.
To not lose the revenue that we had from pay-as-you-throw bags. Now, how that will happen is TBD.
Is
John?
there?
And I will point out that because the transition to the new system won't happen until January of '26, we have all fall where there will continue to be some bag revenues coming in. So that gives us the time to develop a way to capture that additional, say, $150,000 or $200,000 with some sort of system starting in next fall. So
Has there been any? Have we opened the subject with Casella yet? Because it all seems very automated when I see it at work. So it's hard for me to imagine them checking the bags or something. And really, you don't need to answer this now. I just want to have it out there.
I think that's for a future conversation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Let's go to Prudence.
Hi. So I would like to just support. Hi, can you hear me?
You just introduce yourself.
I'm sorry. This is Prudence McKinney. I'm from District 7. I wanted to speak briefly in support of reducing the social service funding. And I say that as somebody who's worked at a local nonprofit and who's on the board of nonprofits and very much value the work that's done. But I think that $461,000 is much too much for a town government to fund, that's really not the role of town government. And that I think reducing that to 1% would still have Brattleboro funding local nonprofits at a much higher rate than most other towns. So I would like to support that reduction to 1%. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. David?
Hi, David Lovemark. I didn't introduce myself before. I'm David Lovemark, District 9, and I'm also a member of the Finance Committee, and I fully endorse the resolution that they passed. I wanted to make an observation about the second round of comments that were made by board members, and I want to acknowledge that Mr. Quip said that, this is a matter of solving the FY26 budget problem, and that, the next board will face the FY27 budget. But it's also important to recognize that this year's budget, which is 9% or 12%, I'm getting a little hazy about the numbers, increase will be next year's base budget. And unless you anticipate a giant increase in revenues, what you're doing is you're handing the next board a really messy, nasty problem. Thank you, and have a good evening.
Thanks. Okay. Select Board, anything further to say? Okay. Dick? Actually, I don't know your name.
Heidi.
Hi, Heidi. Come on up. We've heard plenty from Dick. Yeah. Yeah.
Hi, Heidi Fisher, District 7, also one of the town listers. And, sorry, I am also sitting here and I don't have the answers myself. I would have to refer to Jennifer Brunel, or maybe Mr. Potter knows, I don't know. But I keep thinking in my head that part of what is about to happen to this town also is a reassessment of properties. And we have hired an outside firm, correct me if I'm wrong, to do those reassessments because it's such a big job and the two assessors in our office can't do that. And that is beginning, my understanding is that assessments are supposed to start happening in 2025 and continue through 2027, at which point the actual final assessments will be made and told to everyone. Am I correct so far? Great. So I also keep sitting here and thinking about the cost of that process to the town, and again, looking forward for the taxpayers of the town who will be being reassessed in all of our properties. And I think we need to think about that. That was one thing that I've been sitting here mulling over in my head, and I don't know how it affects the 2026 budget. I expect that firm expects to be paid something along the way and not just have to wait till 2027. I don't know the ins and outs of that. but you may. So there is that in thinking forward, which I don't think anyone has mentioned or is thinking about, and that's about to hit us somewhere along the line soon too. And I'm not quite sure about the comment about EMS. The fire department will be reporting on EMS revenues from billing at the February meeting. And I can also see how, depending on what we learn from that, that may also very much affect this budget going forward. And I think that's a big question that has not also been talked about. So I don't have the answers to any of that, but those are things that I've been sitting here mulling over in my brain, thinking these are two big things no one's talked about that are coming down the pike very soon too, possibly affecting this 2026 budget.
Kind of. So the reassessment, the cost of doing the reassessment is paid out of a special fund that is not funded by property taxes, I don't believe.
It's not the general fund.
Yeah, it's not out of the general fund. The reassessment itself, when that happens, actually, you probably can speak to this way better than I can, so I'm not even going to open my mouth. But properties will be reassessed, and most likely that'll mean their assessed value goes up, but everyone's will go up differently, and then we will have a new sort of like grand list, and that'll be a whole thing. The EMS revenue, there's a budgeted figure in here that's on the conservative side. We've only seen, pretty small amounts of data on revenue that's come in. We've had conversations about it. I think it would be too early to hope for something kind of wildly different than that. But based on what we've kind of seen so far, I would imagine we'll probably be looking at something that's a little better than our very conservative projection, which will have a positive impact on the budget. But I don't want to be gazing into a crystal ball on that. All right, Dick, and then we're going to wrap it up.
When I asked my question before, no one gave me the answer, so I'm going to hope you're going to get that answer for me. What happens if RTM rejects the use of the surplus funds because you need their permission? But I got up to say that even though I disagree with where you're at, I appreciate all the work that went into this. I appreciate your work. I appreciate all the work that Kate has put in. She has put in yeoman's work. She has given you what you asked for, which I thought was a strange request. But given the fact there are several people who have been with this process from the beginning until the end, and I want to thank them also, that we need public participation, not only in the budget issue, but all issues that come before the town. But again, my words in parting is thank you for your work on this.
You're welcome. And this is not the end at all. This is a sort of midway point. We will proceed with this budget in its current state. We will have a warning to put together for town meeting. There can be questions on that warning that help future select boards, maybe future town meetings. And then town meeting itself will be the body that makes the final decision about this. And so we'll see what happens then. And many of you will be in that room, and we'll be relitigating all of these points. No, I don't think we are.
Then make it clear that.
Yeah. So we're going to kind of proceed with the budget that was presented to us tonight, this revised budget. And with that,
You'll want us to bring it back.
yes,
To you
John,
for
help me out
us.
here.
Yes.
Go ahead. You can just say that.
So,
much.
so I think, so I think if I'm understanding this from the board, we will put together this budget for your final consideration probably on January 21st at your next meeting, and we can also bring a draft warning for the RTM and the ballot then. So
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thanks, John. Okay. I guess we have more business to do. My bad. I just assumed we were done. So we're going to move on to new business. We only have one item. It's committee appointments. And we have a memo here with 3 people who are slated to be appointed to committees or to be considered to be appointed to committees. For the ADA Advisory Committee, Kulsum Khan. For the Conservation Committee, Emma Gregg. And for the Energy Committee, Keen Southard. Board members, any discussion on any of that? Peter?
Can we pass this as a slate?
Yeah, could you make a motion to do
All right.
so?
I would like to make the motion that we pass all these committee vacancies and their applicants, pass them in as a slate.
Yep, that's fine, I think you understood.
That works?
Yep. Any discussion?
They all seem qualified for their roles that they're seeking.
Yes, they do.
Very qualified.
Yeah. Anything further? Okay, so Peter made a motion to appoint to the ADA Advisory Committee, Kulsum Khan, to the Conservation Commission, Emma Gregg, and to the Energy Committee, Keen Southard, and to appoint them all as a slate. All those in favor of that motion, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes 5-0. They are appointed. Thank you for your interest in town government. And with that, I'll take one final motion.
I think that's Liz's job.
Liz?
I move to adjourn.
Liz made a motion to adjourn. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye, it passes 5-0. Thank you so much to interpreters, to BCTV, and to members of the public, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
These things off.
Nope. They're still on. They are very much still on. You should.